these glasses.
You're live.
Hey, trying to figure out my reading glasses. Are you like me? Like, that's me. Okay, let's try it again. All right, let's try that again. All right, good. I have like 92 pair of reading glasses. So pre-COVID, when I went to the eye doctor, my eyes were not bad enough to get glasses or contacts. So then COVID happened. And then I know my eyes have gotten worse. And it's just a matter of getting in to see an eye doctor and actually getting glasses. So I have 92 pair of reading glasses that all get lost, every pair of them. But this pair I got in Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music.
Vienna? Is that
Salzburg?
Yeah, Salzburg.
Salzburg, Germany. I had to go to an obstetrician there. And look, they come with a handy dandy.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Fancy.
I know, fancy. All right. We're here today. It's 10 Lords a Leapin'. 10 Lords a Leapin'. And I promised you that if you wanted to walk through the Learner Persona Toolkit with us, you could do that and we would help you along the way. So I'm going to make sure you have the link for that toolkit right now in case you don't. And you can just download it and work along with us. So I'm going to put this into the chat, and this is in YouTube in the chat. But I could also put it over in Kajabi in the chat if you are accessing us through our Kajabi platform. So this is the link I just put there is the link for where you can download the Persona tool. Now, this is a tool that Jonathan developed. And the reason that we're doing it with 10 Lords of Leaping is because Jonathan wrote a really fun blog, and I titled it, "Are You a Lounger or a Leaper?" Not a leper, a leaper, because for some of us, we would prefer to lounge maybe with a drink in our hand and watch the Lords leaping. For others, you'd want to be right there in the middle of the Lords leaping and be competing to see who could leap the highest or furthest or fanciest, perhaps. Others would just stay home and say, why are these Lords leaping, right? But all of that has to do with what motivates us. And Jonathan talked, I really liked the blog that he was talking about staying away from punishment. You had two specific words in the blog. It wasn't about, I forget what the opposite of punishment was, but
Reward.
It wasn't about that. It was about who we are as an individual. So you'd have to go read your blog
read my blog.
Yeah, to know what it said. So what I wanted us to do is to walk through the Persona development tool that Jonathan created. And we use this in our level 2 and 3 certifications that we lead. We have a live level 3, which is a master craftsman. You have to actually deploy a project with a targeted group. Somebody you specifically designed that project for, a group of learners. So you might have more than one persona. In the level 2 gamification journeyman, we start designing personas. So we start with the premise of how it's done. The more you know about your learners, if you can actually develop real personas in level 2, that's great. But for some of our learners, they really don't know who that program will actually be designed for yet. So we might still be doing it based on programs we have designed in the past. But either way, we start with this persona tool. So Jonathan, I'm not seeing any specific questions on either Kajabi or LinkedIn. So let's start with what the tool is, and let's just walk through it step by step. And that way, somebody who's watching the recording can follow along and do it in the recording. So the full tool, the persona development tool, is like 15 pages or something like that. So I just printed out the actual worksheets, kind of. Yeah. So interestingly, I wouldn't start here.
Yeah, it was the idea. No, this page 3 should actually be the last page. But the idea was when I created it that then you would say, "Oh, here's that." You would take this page and you'd say, "Here's my persona."
Okay.
And so when you open the cover, then it would be there. And so that's when
Okay.
it was originally designed. The quick background on this, where this originates from, was in the marketing space as a writer, did a lot of content writing. And so we talk about personas in the marketing world forever. And so actually in my book, Cavemen Can't Market, is where I really fleshed out this tool. And so I'll talk about that as we go along. So there will be you will be using it as a learner persona, but this tool came from back in my marketing days. And so that's the idea of the origins, if you will, of the tool. So yes, the one on page 3, the name and the picture, that's what you want to end up with. So I talk a lot about introduce people to Debbie Diet Coke. She was created in the 90s by a television station in San Antonio, Texas. And so she has a name and she has a picture. When you're starting out, though, this is not where you would start. This is where you want to end up. So once you create this person, then you go out and find a picture for them. A few things, words of warning here, is do not use a picture of someone you know, right? You want it to be something you grab off the internet. And then the name, don't use a person's name that's familiar to you. So don't name like our avatars and our different programs are named after Monica's children. You don't want that. And ours, if you remember from, what day did we talk about this? 3?
Which was the topic?
Personas. I think that
matching
was,
mechanics and motivators.
Yeah.
3 French M was a journey. So yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
we introduced. You saw pictures of ours, and I think we had Irene in 2 even. But so Monica, before I was part of Sententia, but she'd certainly gone through my marketing courses. So she created Irene and named it after her friend Irene. So the name Irene means something different to her. So then she has this like specific person that then she thinks about. And so we want to be able to push away from that. So we don't have the history of someone with that name. In my case, it's my ex-mother-in-law's name. And so I have a very different connotation with it. So when it comes to naming, choose a name that is not familiar with you, to you.
And I think also, and this is when we're doing personas, it's one area where we have to think about political correctness and the right way to do things. In reality, like if I'm designing for a group of people who are based in India, then, and that is the entire audience, and probably my persona should look like somebody who is working in India and even perhaps have culturally significant name that matches it, because it helps us to identify with that work group. So I always encourage us to push the envelope a little bit when we're designing personas, because we have to make that person real to us. And if I could digress for just a minute, on one of our personas, his name is Brad, and he is mid-career. So he's anywhere from 35 to 55, let's say. But Brad's not just a male. Brad can also be a female. But I was thinking about the Brad persona today. And one of the things that I don't think we've ever attributed to that persona, but that has become more and more significant, is that individual is like an influencer of some sort. So it might be that they're a YouTube or a Instagram influencer in the field of learning and development. But it also, they all have some other part of their life that's significant for them. So perhaps they do this L&D job, but they're not planning on ending up here. They may want to be like a chief learning officer eventually, or to move out on their own and do something. But I think consistently in those Brads, we see people who are musicians, artists, people working to become chief learning officers. So they're changing jobs. They've got significant hobbies that even could be like they're a coach, that they spend a lot of time coaching youth, or they spend a lot of times with cars. I mean, just this whole other part of them that is hugely significant as to who they are, more so than like our Irene, who's comfortable in that L&D team member role, who wants to be a part of a good team and work for a good boss and do the best job that that individual can do. The Brad has somewhere that they're going, that's another significant part of their life. So what do you think about that?
Good, but that's our personas, not theirs.
Well, I know, but I was just thinking
you do not have Brads, you do not have Irene.
But as you develop your my whole point with that is that your personas that you develop today are not static, right? So that doesn't mean that this persona will never change. That as time changes, as the marketplace changes, as work continues to evolve, so will our personas. And to just stay in touch with who that persona is, so we're actually designing for real live people, not just somebody we made up 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my point.
Okay. Thanks. So where it all starts is on 4. And so when we used to, in the old days of marketing, so pre-1990s, we would talk about our demos. We would say our demographic. So our demo is women between the ages of 25 and 35, have an household income between 40 and 80,000, who have 1.7 cars, 2.3 children, and so on. Well, that's not you, right? You're a specific age. You're a specific, you make a specific amount of money. You may have neighbors that have 1.7 cars, one that runs and one that's up on blocks, but you probably have no car, 1 car, 2 car, 3 cars. And then if you have 2.3 children, congratulations, you're pregnant. So the point of, we still start with our demographic. So what is the demographic? Because at the end, the persona is going to have an image, a picture, a name, a history, like you were just hearing Monica talking about all the different folks. Go ahead and look at Kajabi.
Okay.
Got a comment.
I will.
So page 4 and 5, we start looking at those demographics, and we want to push this further so that to make sure that it's a specific age, a specific ethnicity. And again, what Monica was saying, if it were writing for most of the people in India, then this person should be Indian. And to realize that personas are not politically correct. They're not an average or a mean. They're stereotypical and so on, because they represent a person. So give them a specific age, specific ethnicity, relationship status, family size, do they have pets, and so on. So and even household income. And so often when we get to this, our folks in level 2, when they create these, they still do these ranges. And it's like, no, your persona is supposed to be a person. So it's just how we are. So all the questions on page 4 and 5, the goal is to begin to get to know them. So what car do they drive? Because that's significant. When they're looking at these things, so then we get to know who they are. So each of these are designed to help you get to know this person.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even down to who they are in the company, their role, and so on. That's on the bottom, at the end of page 5. Maybe you start there so you get to know who they are inside the company.
Yeah, like that professional aspirations. Who do they see themselves? What do they? Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and some of these questions on this one, some come in psychographics here, but just because they're at this position currently, that doesn't mean they have the desire to be something else. So, and that, again, that's how you get to know them. That just because they're miserable in their job or something. So these are all questions that aren't might not be significant to the actual learning that you're doing, and what they are designed for is to help you begin to understand who this person is. So again, demographics, the demo's been around forever. What's more important, what became more important, again, pre-1980s or 90s, but certainly during the 90s, was the psychographics. And this is where we really get to know them, because in the other, with demographics, they can be sort of static. They can feel very general. And so with psychographics, this is when we start to have fun with them. And so how do you, when you get to know this person? So it starts right off at the top on 6 is describe the typical evening from when they leave work to when they go to sleep. So the person who leaves work and goes to the gym, and then goes to the pub, and then eventually gets home at 11 o'clock at night is very different from the person who rushes home from work or rushes to pick up his or her children at after school care or something. So those are two very, very different types of people. And then describe their typical weekend. So again, this is how people spend their free time. You get to understand them, get a feel for them. And then more so, you get the games played and so on, favorite movies.
Have you ever had something about the psychographic information that you found really interesting when you've done an interview or talked to somebody? I know I've had a few that I thought, like one of the people that we did a motivational interview for a project, one of her most fun things to do, she was high beauty from the Reese profile, but is she liked walking home because she was walking past like clothing boutiques and galleries, and she really liked window shopping on her way home. It just kind of was that debrief between work and getting home, and just an opportunity to imagine, if you will. And I just thought that was a lot of fun. Just when you talk to people and you care about them and and they know that you're not trying to put them on the spot to pin them down into a box, but just, just asking questions, just like you would a friend. It's so interesting what is important to them. I know we worked with one group that they were hugely family driven, hugely, like the entire weekends was all about family. And I know that there's those of us that is a chapter in our life, perhaps, but this was across the board. I thought that was really interesting when you start thinking about the psychographics. And I think what's probably most interesting is they're not you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other reason to go through this. If you remember self-hugging, if we don't have a persona, we end up designing training that we like, not what they like, but what we like. And so when we get into these areas, now we can start to build for them, because as you saw, they become an actual person, persona that we can engage with. And so they are different from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. That's good.
And the psychographics is the questions here are not the end all be all. You'd want to keep working inside of this. That's what Monica was talking about, how our Brads have all these interests outside of their job, their work. And so these questions would lead toward that, but may not be asking that exact question. So gadgets in the kitchen really just goes to how much they spend on food preparation, I guess.
Or if they like to cook, right?
Yeah, because
then you're probably going to have more things.
Yeah, one of my nephews doesn't have anything in the kitchen when it comes to gadgets.
Yeah.
It's a microwave. So, yeah. So,
or serving, if you like to have people over, then you're going to have, if you're social.
Yeah.
I like it.
So you're going to hear in a little bit here from me where we're going with this. Most persona tools stop here, where we take the demographics, we take their psychographics, put together a composite, make a person, give that person a name, and so on. And they stopped there. And my goal was always to get to a deeper level. And if you've heard me and heard us talking about the Reese motivation profile and so on, it's like, how do we get to see what really drives them, what creates their personalities? And so I wasn't really happy with where the psychographics left us. So that's when I came up with the VIP. So VIP stands for values, interests, and priorities. So the interests will surface during the psychographics. So some of those will surface there. So values becomes important to ask what's important to them in life. So family that Monica was mentioning, but not just the traditional values from society, but what do they physically value in life? What do they own that they value? What do they do? What is valuable to them? So don't think just morals, but also what is of value to them. Interests, again, what are they watching? What are they streaming on TV? And then priorities, because I came up with this, so I thought it was pretty cool, is when two values are in competition, which one takes the priority? So to ranking their values. So in my book, Caveman Can't Market, don't buy, it's not necessarily in your field, so I'm not selling it on this time here together. But I introduce my readers to Debbie Diet Coke. I mentioned her earlier. And so what happens when Debbie, who values her family is extremely important, and so is her church. This is Debbie. And so Debbie has volunteers. She runs the one of the Sunday schools. So what happens on Sunday morning when she wakes up and one of her children is sick? And does she honor her commitment to her church community and maybe have the husband stay home, get a babysitter or something for the sick child? Or does she skip going to church and stay at home and take care of her child? Okay, so there's two things that are of value to her, and which one is of more value than the other? So that's the VIP. The values, interests, and priorities idea. So again, we're wanting to really get in to see what's important to them.
Cool.
Okay. So fears and frustrations. And if we know somebody's motivational profile, we can anticipate what their fears are, and by the way, what frustrates them. So what keeps them up at night? What do they worry about? What do they stress about? Both in their personal lives and also at work. Okay, so and we could even have people. Their boss frustrates them or something, but what are some of the things that frustrate them? What are their fears? And this is extremely important when it comes to in the marketing world, because this is where a lot of the persuasion tactics and so on push people into a buying decision because of fear of missing out, fear of, if you think of insurance as an industry, is all based on fear. And so what is it that someone's fears? What's their levels of fear? Because then we can start to tap into those to move them. So not that you're going to scare your people in your training program, but it could be like if they're fear of not measuring up, of losing their job, fear of screwing up at work, messing up, these types of things. If we could tap into those,
or being left behind, even.
Yeah, left behind.
There's so much chatter right now about artificial intelligence, and how fast is life going to change for all of us. I think it's going to change a lot more quickly than we'd like to think it would.
Yeah, I forwarded an email to you. I don't know if you. I didn't take a time to look at it, but they're actually writing courses using AI. So you just type in keywords, gamification, learning, and then the chat bot goes out and grabs up all these things and makes a course on gamification. So you don't have to take level 1. You could just level 1 certification.
But then you don't know what is actual.
Yeah.
Because one of our master craftsmen sent me a note saying I typed me into this one AI thing we were talking about. He said, "This is what it said about you. Is this true?" And so I was reading it, and it's all true, except it gave me authoring credit for a book that I had never heard of before.
there you
I hope
go.
it's a good book.
Better
But
find it.
I was like, well, because it was actually written in 2009, which was 3 years. I mean, I was doing gamification design, but it's 3 years before I knew gamification was a genre. So they weren't really talking about gamification, but it was game-based learning and virtual worlds, which is really interesting for 2009.
Yeah, better go find
So
it.
it's a whopping $4.50. I put it in my Amazon cart
Mhm.
because I'd like to see the book I wrote. But that is one of the challenges, of course, is the information accurate? Because it's just, it's all these bots pulling from all this information, and wherever the information came from may or may not be accurate. So yeah. Anyhow, all that to say is things will continue to change. And so what's important to them as we're designing? And one of them is not time designated for training.
Mhm.
Like we're required to take this training, but I still have my quota, or I still have these customer calls I have to make, or I still have to wait on customers live in a live environment, and I'm supposed to squeeze in this training somehow. So we need to make sure that there's not a system or a process in place that's actually preventing the outcomes that we want from a training program. And that's a common frustration we run into, is there's no time. I have no time to do it, and I'm expected to do it all. And it's supposed to be important to me, but how can it be important to me when everything else is supposed to be important also? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So when I was designing, so I was getting down to the creation of this. And when I was working with folks in my marketing seminars, they still just weren't, the personas didn't feel real yet. And so that's where I came up with page 10 is $1,000 in the day off. So if you gave this person $1,000 in the day off, how would they spend it? Because that would tell a lot about people. And I use this as an example in self-hugging as well, is because we tend to judge people if they spend $1,000 in a day off differently than we do. And that's where this judgment comes in sometimes. So for instance, if Debbie Diet Coke, if we gave her $1,000 a day off, she's going to spend a little bit of that on herself and feel guilty about it. She's going to get a mani-pedi because it's day off, and then spend the rest of the day doing some chores, spend the rest of the money paying down some bills, buying something that the household needs. You give it's weird to do it when it's me. Usually I have a picture of what I looked like when I wrote the book, my author picture. But it's saying if you gave that guy $1,000 in the day off, he's going to have one heck of a party. He's going to spend all day getting ready, getting the food, making sure he has the right drinks for everybody, that whatever you want, it's there, getting the DJ set up, the booth, and just going to have this great party. And then what happens there is you can see where we already would judge each other, because she would say, well, that's just wrong. You all that frivolity, you wasted all that money and time, you got nothing to show for it. And he's going to look at Debbie and say, Debbie, it's the moments in life that matter. You're not going to remember 5 years from now that you paid down the bills. Take this opportunity, get baby. They're from San Antonio, so get a babysitter for your children. You and your husband go down to Port Aransas for the evenings and for the night, have a wonderful meal, and so on. So it's, again, the $1,000 in a day off, we really begin to know them as well. So it's a fun one too, to play around with. And all of this drives down to page 11 is when we get to think about their motivational profile. So I'm not taking the time here. All of us have 16 core desires. What makes you different from me, you different from your learners, is the emphasis you put on any one of these. And this is what drives our personalities. So the tendency when you see this with our level 2 folks is that they go all high or low. Most people are normal, right? But what drives our personality is when we are outside of average. So social contact, for instance, is having peer relationships. If we just go to work every day, we're fine. It really doesn't drive our personality. If we want more, than 8 hours a day. That's going to drive some extroverted traits, hanging out, going to happy hour, spending time with friends on the weekends, and so on. So the idea is to choose 2 or 3 of these that the person's high in, 2 or 3 that they're low in. So Debbie would be high tranquility but low vengeance, for instance. You might be high idealism, your learner might not be. So the idea is to find 2 or 3 of these, because that's what's going to be driving that person. That's what's going to create those values. So that's why we went through the values already, so that if she had a high desire family, well, here we go. There's family right there. So that persona is high on family. If their values are their cars or their houses, maybe they're higher status and less so in family. So we basically, everything up to page 11 is so that we can create their motivational profile, because now we can anticipate the decisions they're going to make, and in the gamification world, what they're going to find as fun, what they're going to enjoy as fun.
So you want to go back to, I don't know if it's 2, Partridge in a Pear Tree was 1, Turtle Doves. I think Matchimo was Turtle Doves.
Yeah.
But you want to go back to, I think it's session 3, where we do have the Matchimo game, and that you can download that and play it. And yeah, Matchimo game is on day 2, 2 Turtle Doves. So the Matchimo is, once you get to page 11 of this learner persona and you really know this person you're designing for, then you can start matching the 199 game mechanics that Jonathan's identified that we can use in learning programs. You can start matching, well, this motivator works with this motivation. This motivation works with this mechanic, because Jonathan's also mapped that for you. He's done all the hard work for you, that you can tell, well, okay, this is their motivators, what mechanics work with that. And Jonathan's got that all mapped for you. So it's pretty cool. So that's good. What's the last? The name and picture.
Because now we can get to their name and their picture. Because now we really know this person at a level that we don't typically know people. Because we usually only know people on the surface. Now we're down to their core, who they actually are in real life. Very good.
So download the tool. I have found that it's best to not design in isolation. So if you is the L&D department, but Monica, it's only me, I have to do it. There's lots of groups on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get with some people. We have our Friday Night Game Garage starting on the 13th. That's a great network of people just like you, just like me, who are wanting to just keep improving and developing our skills in game-based learning, gamification, gamified learning design. And get us group together and start working on your personas, because people will give you insight that we just don't see because we're too close to it. We're just too close. I have a saying, a belief, firm belief, that I'll learn more in 10 minutes of putting my ideas in someone else's hands than I will pouring it over it for 10 hours on my own. And they'll say a simple thing, well, how'd you consider it? Or what about? And I'll be like, well, of course you're right. Of course you were right. Why did I see that? Right. And it's just because we're just too close to it, and they're not. They're stepped back. They don't have the same emotional attachment. So find some buddies, some colleagues, some friends, and do some persona design. Try not to do it on your own. You'll get a more well-rounded persona, and you, in all likelihood, will have more than one that you are developing for. Right. Yeah.
Typically about 3 seems to be. And if you just think of it that in the workplace, if you think the people on the people in finance and audits and HR, so everything that's rule oriented, that's a very different, a person that's attracted to that job is very different from the creatives, the marketing folks, the writing folks, the art folks. And so we would want to, if we're representing the whole company, we'd want to hit those 2. So I usually recommend one for the folks that are more on the regulatory side, ones that are on the creative side, and then one for the admin, the general administration folks,
Operations, yeah.
operations, people working a desk and so on.
Yeah.
And then if you have C-level folks in your training, you can create one there as well. But usually, if we're going company wide, we can usually cover with 3.
There'll be a good enough
Yeah.
scope, right? Yeah. Which I don't care what kind of program you're designing, whether it's gamified or not. If we're not doing personas and you're rolling out the exact same training for 12,000 individuals, I guarantee you that it's not going to work for 12,000 individuals. There's nothing wrong with your program. It's just that it doesn't appeal to those 12,000 individuals. It'll appeal to some of them. Some of them will do it just to do it. You'll be chasing the rest down if you're required to have them take it, because we're not designing for them. We're just thinking about, got to get this out. I'm required to get it out. It's got to get done. And we're not thinking about what's valuable to them.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to designing anyway. Well, with personas, the fear is, well, what about, because it is so specific, so what about those folks over there, this little subset, is you'll always have your outliers. There's always the outliers out there. What we're wanting to do is appeal to the solid core of our learners. I always say, wouldn't want to design for me because I'm so weird and different from everyone else, and I have the data to show it. My reason motivation, it's scientifically accurate that I am unlike most people. But
because of your high status motivator, I'd want to pull you in as somebody who's like an ambassador or an evangelist for the program that can help me to promote it. Because
but I'm saying as far as designing training,
right. But even those outliers, you can still pull them in to make them a significant part of your launch, deployment, and success of your program. Yeah. So that's good. All right, Jonathan, thank you. I love it. Thanks so much for bringing that tool. The links are there, of course, and feel free to reach out and ask us any questions that you have. We're always happy to answer the questions. If we don't know, we've got a super broad network of brilliantly creative designers, and we will reach out and ask them, and we will find an answer for you. So happy 10 Lords of Leaping, the 10th day of Christmas. There's only 2 left. We've got drummers drumming and pipers piping tomorrow. So I'm not sure what tomorrow's topic is, but we will, I don't know. I'll have to make sure we look. Okay, but Piper's Piping is tomorrow. So we'll see you back here for the 11th day of Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.